Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcode.com. So we're going to continue with this Express To-Dos build. So in the first video, we kind of set up the database. We kind of set up pretty much everything we really needed as far as just making it like a structured app with a database and whatnot. Now we just need to literally build the app. Okay. So back to our code. What we need to do is set up the actual like database connection. So that's what this video is going to be focusing on. Like, how do we set up that Mongo database connection? I'm going to keep it real simple for this video, and we're going to just do it all in the server.js file. So in other videos, in other builds that I've done, you can kind of see how I've organized it into more files, but I'm going to keep this particular build simpler than usual. Okay, so what's going to happen is that here in the server.js, you see there's like a bunch of different sections. We're going to go into here where we import dependencies, and what I'm going to want you to do is import Mongoose. So we're going to say import Mongoose from Mongoose. Okay, easy enough. Then right below where we create all these, then we're going to want to create another variable here in these like global variable section. We're going to say const Mongo URI. Let me just make sure that that matches the name from our .env. Mongo URI equals process.env.mongo URI. Because again, this process.env object is where all those variables from our .env file are going to be. Okay, cool. So that's good and running, and we're good to go. So now the next step is going to be, now we're just going to create another section here. We're going to create our connection. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally copy one of these headings, create a new heading, and we'll just call this MongoDB Connection. Okay, now basically what we need to do is we're going to create Mongoose.connect, and that's going to establish the connection. The first variable should be the Mongo URI, because that's like where the URL of the database we're connecting to, with the username and password, all that stuff that's in our .env. And then we have to pass in this config object, which we have to do because otherwise you get, actually maybe we don't anymore. Use new URL parser, doesn't actually ask me for that anymore. So they've probably updated it, where I don't need to pass that anymore. So we'll find out in a second. Okay, but now that should connect to the database. That's pretty straightforward. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want like little messages to show up in the terminal to kind of tell us that our database got connected, so we can actually see that the database was connected. So we're going to do these events. So we're going to do mongoose.connection.on. This allows us to register an event. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just space it out like this. And we're going to do one event when the connection is open. And we're going to say, hey, when the connection is open, what I want to do is console.log. Okay, you are connected to Mongo. And I'm going to copy two more of these, just less typing. So boop, boop. The second event is going to be when the connection closes. And so here we're going to say disconnected from Mongo. And then there's going to be one for when, if there's an error in the attempt to connect, then that's going to receive an error object, that function. And we're going to want to console log the error object. Okay, and that's it. So now let's just run the server real quick just to make sure that like we see that Mongoose message and that it works just fine. So in the package.json, I have two scripts for running our application. Right now we're in developing mode because we're just developing the app here on our computer. So I'm going to use the dev script, which is npm run dev. Okay, and this is what you'd want to see. Like that's correct. Listening on port 3000, connected to Mongo. So wonderful, we've established our connection. Now what we need to do is create our to-dos model object. That's going to be the object we can use to add to-dos to the database, remove to-dos, that kind of thing. So I'm going to head back to server.js, continue here under MongoDB Connection, make another heading, and we're going to say like to-do model. Okay, and if you're wondering about the colors, that's because of an extension I have called Better Comments. Okay, you might not see it turn orange on for you. Okay, so here we go. So we're gonna say const. First, we have to create a schema. Okay, so we're gonna say const to do schema equals mongoose dot schema. Okay, and I think this should be like a new schema. New mongoose dot schema. Okay, and then from here, what I'm going to do is we're going to describe what the to-dos should have. So every to-do should have a message. Okay, and we'll say that the message is a string. Okay, and then it should have a completed property, like whether you've done the to-do or not, which should be a Boolean. And we're going to keep it that simple. But that's the idea, is like that's what a individual to-do looks like. So every to-do should be an object with these two properties, with the values, that type of data. So message should always be a string, completed should always be a Boolean. Okay. And now what we're going to do is create the to-do object. So we're going to say const to-do, notice uppercase, equals mongoose dot model. And then the mongoose.model function takes one, the name of the model, which will be to do, and then two takes a schema, to do schema. Okay, and now we have this to do object. And what this is going to do is that it knows that anytime I use this object to create to dos, it's going to basically create a to dos table or to dos collection in my Mongoose database where we can then add things. Okay. And then here we have the to-do schema. So there we go. Now we're all set where we can actually start, building out our routes and working with the to-dos. One thing I am going to do though is to make it easier to use, instead of having to like export this to-do object and create some like circular, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to package the to-do using custom middleware, so that way it's always available to all my routes. So what I am going to do is that here in my routes, I'm going to make a custom piece of middleware, app.use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create a function rec res next. And I'm going to store the to-do object inside request. That'll make it available to all my routes. So we're going to say rec.models.todo equals to do. Actually, well, let's see here. Let's just do this. Rec.models equals an object, and in that object we have an object we have to do. Okay, and then basically that's literally all that middleware is going to do. It's just going to literally add that property to the request object, and then we're going to hit next. Okay, and that's it. That will do what I needed to do, so that way I have the models object available to me on all my routes. Okay, without me having to like do imports and exports and all that stuff. And this is good. Now we have all the Mongoose stuff set up, and we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to do a git add, git commit -m, Mongo Connection configured. That way you can go back and like see the different commits to see like how the code evolved at the end of each of these videos. Okay, so with that, I'll see you in the next video where we'll actually start building out the actual pages.